Hello, everyone. This is Aaron Ramirez from the Pueblo City County Library District, your friendly manager of local history and genealogy. I'm joined today with Thomas MacEntee. Thomas is a guy with a love of punk rock music, but also art history, who somehow fell into the technology industry years ago. He left a lucrative tech career to pursue his love of family history and genealogy. Technology and historical research seem like opposites, but tech people like Thomas are needed to guide you through the maze of options so you can find your ancestors and bring their stories to life. So, thank you so much, Thomas, for joining us today. And I'm going to leave and you can take it away.
Great. Thanks, Aaron, so much. And thanks for moderating. I know that can be an unglorified job. I really appreciate it. Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas MacEntee. Usually I say I'm in Chicago, where many are cold, but few are frozen. But I'm actually in Palm Springs, California, in the Southern California desert. Thus, my voice. It is very low humidity here. Air quality is touchy. You add in air conditioning, and then if I'm teaching a lot online, I end up sounding like B. Arthur in Golden Girls, which may not be a bad thing. So I hope you'll bear with me, and I'll be taking drinks of water during the webinar. We're here for Hiding Out in the Open, Discovering LGBT Family History. I created this talk probably about 6 years ago to fulfill a need. I was getting emails from followers who said, I think that a great uncle was gay, or I think that, my aunt was living with a female friend and they may have been a couple. And this can pop up during genealogy research and family history. And how to handle that. So I do want to let you know that the presentation and the handout, by the way, there's a link to the handout uh, that we're posting as well. The handout is my intellectual property. I would prefer that you not post it out on the internet. It is a substantial handout. I believe in actionable genealogy education. If you're going to honor me with up to an hour of your time this evening, then you deserve a takeaway. You deserve something that has everything I cover. You shouldn't have to write down website URLs. Those are covered in the resources at the end. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. I will not go too quickly. A friend of mine called this actually LGBT history for straight people, but in a way, that's what it comes down to. A lot of genealogists, just like the regular population, uh, are certain orientation sexually, and they're not aware of LGBT history. And you know that when we do genealogy, history is a big part of it. And so, what we're going to go over is we're going to go over the fact that there have always been LGBT people, except they weren't identified that way. If you have an ancestor from the early 1900s who was in a same sex relationship, the word homosexual was relatively new. They wouldn't identify themselves as we do today. So, we'll also talk about presentism and how we have to guard against that. Uh, I will tell you that the records are difficult to find, period, and photos, especially like these. So, why are their stories important? You know, uh, Remember when Who Do You Think You Are, the series came out? And someone said, wouldn't you like to be on a show like that? And another friend said, well, I come from 500 years of sheep herders. It doesn't mean that their stories were not important. Uh, LGBT people have life stories that deserve to be recognized, but they are often forgotten. This can come through separation from family. This can come through uh, discovery of diaries and letters that are then destroyed. It really depends on the family or the person that discovers them. So think about it. I'm going to ask a few questions here. Does it really matter that you know more about an LGBT ancestor and that person's activities? Well, if you're a genealogist, maybe not. It's all dates, right? It's all dates and events. That's it. What does it matter? It really doesn't matter. But if you're more of a family historian, and you're writing stories or the keeper of that knowledge and you want to pass it down, then maybe it does matter. Uh, what value could such information add to the overall information about that ancestor? Quite a bit. You could understand the motivation for certain things. Why did he or she move to a certain city all of a sudden? Why were they living in this one place? Why did they have that type of occupation? So these are factors, and yeah, it does impact that. Uh, so these details as to sexuality and lifestyle do matter. Often they're not discussed. Uh, and so that's why we're here for this talk, and this is why I present this. Some of these photos were amazing to be able to find. So first off, let's say that you do discover an LGBT ancestor. How will you use that information in your genealogy research? Will you put it in a story? Will you put it in a note or a source citation? Uh, that's your decision. Also, we'll talk about living persons and also even the impact of some of this information if the person has passed away, but the impact on the rest of the family. And that's why I bring up the second question. Let me take some water here. How will your research be shared? This is what you have to think of as well. Uh, if you post this to Ancestry and you have a public tree, then the information's out there. Remember the rule that I give my niece and nephew about the internet. The internet is a photocopy machine. Once it's out there, it's out there. So you have to consider that. Consider privacy as well. And as I said before, presentism. And if you don't know what it is, it's interpreting the past through the present eyes. Uh, there's some things that, people did that I just can't conceive of today. But I have to try and look at it through the eyes of, 1850, 1860. It doesn't give those people a pass for bad behavior, but you need to take that whole history together. This is another one. I've written articles about this. Should you out your LGBT ancestor? Is that something you want to do? Technically, here and legally here in the U.S., dead people have no privacy, and that's a fact. That's the way the law works. But it doesn't mean that you should, go ahead and say, "Did you know so and so was gay or lesbian or transgendered?" and post all this information. So let's go over gay history in the United States. There are some great books out there which I have listed in the URL. Okay. There's some stuff that you may remember. I will tell you right now, I'm 62. I came out in 1986 at the age of 23 at the height of the AIDS crisis. So basically, uh, my knowledge is from the late 70s forward, but there's a lot more than that. The military, World War II probably played the most important role in U.S. gay history. And this is why. During the war, men and women, they were normally turned away from military service for their sexuality, but they were pressed into service to help with the war. I had a good friend who died at age 99. He was a Marine at Guadalcanal. I remember the stories that he would tell. Okay. And there are photos that you will find out there. Okay. So during this 6 year period from 39 to 45, a lot of these gay men and women, they had lived lives of isolation. Can you imagine being an 18 or 19-year-old man, a boy in Kansas, thinking that there was something wrong with you because you're attracted to men and you didn't know anyone else? And then you're put into a situation where you find other people that are just like you. This is what I'm talking about. This is why was World War II was a major event in gay history. It sort of, you found the members of your tribe. You realize that you were not the only one. You still may have believed that it wasn't right or society told you that, but this coming together to a level, World War One did the same thing, but realize that the U.S. entered World War One relatively late, uh, and it wasn't as global a war in terms of the Pacific. So that's important. Here's Alameda Air Force Base in San Francisco. Now, I'm going to tell you something here. You may not realize this. If you look at cities in the US with large gay populations, San Francisco, New York, San Diego, Chicago, Philadelphia, they were all military bases during World War II. So if your service ended there, guess what? You decided to go and live there. And that's why these have become major gay cities. A lot of people have never made the connection there, but it totally makes sense. And you build a community, and that's what happened. Uh, Unfortunately, once the war was over, there was no more need for LGBT people. And there was a bit of a pink scare. This was common. This is during the McCarthy era, late 40s, early 50s. The whole State Department, there was supposedly a gay spy ring, and you would see this in the news. So they were witch hunts, basically. And the lavender scare, that's what I meant to call it, not the pink scare. So then, if you're not LGBT, if you didn't grow up or live in an area in a time of non-acceptance, you may not understand this, but you had to live and behave under a code. Okay, and that continued to develop. That's how we interacted as gay people, as lesbians, bisexual, transgender. It was code. It was the way we talked. It was the way we worked. Sometimes people would enter marriages of convenience, etc. Uh, in most places, homosexuality was a crime. If you were suspected of being queer or different, you could lose your job and be shunned by your family. This is why the development of the code. Del Martin and Alliance, I'm forgetting the first name, pioneering founders of Daughters of Bilitis, one of the first lesbian groups in New York City. They lived, I knew them, I met them in San Francisco. So also, there were very few people who lived out prior to the 1950s. So keep this in mind in what you're going to find on records. You have to read between the lines, right? So very few people were out. It was a rarity because it was illegal, and you shared that information maybe with a few friends, maybe with sympathetic relatives. So this is why it's difficult to find that information in public records. Here's one of the earlier gay bars in New York City. Now, this is before my time, before Stonewall, but many of the gay bars in New York were owned by the mafia. Okay. The bar culture was a way that men and women met. Uh, and they were mostly controlled by the mafia. There were payoffs to police and everything to look the other way. Uh, uh, Gay people were not treated very well in the bars, uh, extorted for money or blackmailed. The other thing is you may not realize there was a code of conduct. My older LGBT friends tell me that you had to have both hands on the bar at all times. You could not do any touch dancing. And there were just certain things. Also, bars were rated, and this was a big deal. If you were in a bar or a place that was rated, your name was in the newspaper. Your name, your age, your home address, your employer's name, and your occupation. Imagine that. Imagine also that hanging over you when you wanted to go out and meet someone. That was a big deal. Now, that is one of the unfortunate public records that we have through the newspaper. Great. Here is Chicago Daily News. 109 arrested in Vice Den. Yes, 8 of them were teachers. And so you will see more and more of these articles starting in the early 60s before Stonewall. Speaking of which, Stonewall riots, June 1969. That really is a breaking point in U.S. gay history. Stonewall was a mafia-owned bar in Greenwich Village, uh, and basically, uh, they were tired of uh, the treatment, and they decided to reject it. It was led by drag queens, basically, because during a police raid, and they said, "No, we're not doing this time." It lasted over 2 nights. There were also a lot of younger kids involved. And so that's why June is Gay Pride Month. That's why Gay Pride Day is always the Sunday, the last Sunday in June. Here's a photo of the kids from Stonewall. The Stonewall Inn is on the National Register of Historic Places in the U.S. in New York City. And so there's that. So I know it doesn't cover everything. It doesn't cover AIDS. It doesn't bring it up to the current, but I want you to understand that if you're not exposed to that, how important that is in terms of doing your research. I do urge you to look at some of the books in the resource list. Now let's talk about code and subcultures. If you're not familiar, you are going to have to learn a new vocabulary. Yeah, it was early Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I don't know what movie this was, whether it was Rope by Hitchcock, which has a gay theme to it. Uh, and then there's this, Polari. I just saw an article today about this. Do you know what Polari is? Okay. So Polari is a slang language that developed in Britain during the 60s. And it was used by gays and performing artists, criminals, prostitutes, and others that lived on the margins of society. But it really has its roots as far back as the 16th century. Okay, it's almost more of an attitude, like drag is an attitude. If you've ever seen the series Pose on TV, and so, but it's not really used. There are a few words that have migrated into the English language, but it was a way of talking without being caught. Okay. And here, now bring it forward, and we've got RuPaul, and and we've got drag brunches, and all of this. It wasn't this way when I grew up, when I came out either. Okay. So is there a code today? I think there still is a code, because there's a code as a way of saying, "Oh, I know you're one of us," or "You're like me," without saying, "Hey, you're like me." So it also has made it more acceptable for LGBT people, especially as portrayed by the media. Andy Warhol, and I think that's Candy Darling, and in New York City during the 1960s at the Knitting Factory. Gayborhood. Yes, I mean the gay neighborhood. Some people would call it the gay ghetto. Uh, I remember when I moved to San Francisco in 1986, I didn't want to live in the gay ghetto uh, because it just, I didn't identify fully with it. But some people think that if you identify as LGBT in certain cities, you have to live in a certain neighborhood. Let's take take the example of my great grandparents. No, they were not LGBT. Francis Presner and Henneberg, Edward Henneberg. They were married in 1912, but he came from Germany. What did your immigrant ancestor do when they arrived in the United States, especially if they arrived in New York? Well, they settled in the ethnic neighborhood for that group of people. It could be German. It could even be, like for Henneberg, a group from Saxony, from Leipzig. All right. And that's what you did. You had your newspapers, you had your language, you felt comfortable there. New York was very segregated with ethnic neighborhoods. I know my great grandparents helped raise me. They were born in the 1890s. And I remember their stories about living in New York and growing up. So, so that's really important. And that's a parallel. That's basically how these gay neighborhoods developed in some of the cities. Some are more famous than others. If you say Chelsea or Greenwich Village today in New York City, yeah, and if you were to say you live there, at a certain point it would have said that you were LGBT. Same thing in San Francisco. If you lived in the Castro, it's not that case anymore. But the thing is, uh, the behavior mirrors basically what our immigrant ancestors went through. Here's the Black Cat Cafe in San Francisco, one of the early gay bars, one a drag bar. Jose Soria was the Empress of San Francisco and performed there. So basically, these places became a sense of belonging. They were more than a bar, they were a social club. Uh, and so also newcomers would come in and they would settle. If you moved from Kansas and your family threw you out, you would go and you settle in one of these cities in one of these neighborhoods. This is a classic photo. Now, this is at the steps of Harvey Milk's photo shop on Castro, and it shows the transition in the neighborhood. The Castro was, up until the early 70s, a working class Irish neighborhood. But then gay men who identified as gay uh, came and bought up cheap housing and built a neighborhood. So again, presentism also though. Now remember I said Castro, everyone thinks Castro was always gay. No, it was the Polk Gulch area on Polk Street uh, in San Francisco that was the first gay ghetto. That would be the 40s and 50s once the World War II was over. Bookstores, bars, and other hangouts. So, again, it has to do with the time period. So, when you're doing research, keep this in mind. You may have to figure out, well, what was the gay neighborhood at that point? Also, queer work, and I use the term queer. When I came out, queer it was a negative word. I have a certain philosophy about uh, owning words, taking it back and giving it power. And so it's more commonly used now. But I just wanted to put that out there. Occupations offer clues. Yes, a hairdresser, stereotypical, isn't it? Okay. So one of my clients said that her uncle was a hairdresser by trade and asked, why are so many male hairdressers also gay? Well, you have to deal with the realities of earning a living that many gay people had to go through. Here was a movement in, I believe, California for teachers, firing teachers that identified as LGBT. You could be fired for being gay almost all across the city up until the nation up until recently. So this is why a hairdresser earned their own business. They had a small set of tools they could just pick up and go to another city. If you were in a raid at a bar and your business and everything was listed, it was easy. Same thing with a flower shop. Florists, yes, stereotypically gay men. But the thing is, it's a portable business. I hope that makes sense. There were also other occupations as well, department stores known as ribbon clerks. I didn't know that until I did some research. These were men and women that would work in department stores, very fashionable. And if you look on a map historically, many of the gay and lesbian meeting places were right there. Okay. So, yeah, salesman behind the counter. So, ribbon clerk was basically gay slang, was code for that. So, when we're talking on U.S. Census occupation sheets, pay very close attention. So if you see the term uh, artist or set designer, so you may not see artist, you'll see a set designer, interior decorator, fashion designer. You may not see hairdresser. You may see some other film or photo related term. Okay. So that would be done sometimes. But, and so you have to read through that. Some great photos here. Uh, Also, if you find a household of two men or women, especially of a certain age, that are living alone, you may have one of them listed as an employee, private secretary, maid, assistant. That was very common. So one would be listed as the head of household, okay, or they could be a servant in a private home or for a private family. And so that would be the case as well. The So let me take some more water. I hope you're still with me. It seems that I teach this every June, and I enjoy it every time that I teach it. So let's look for clues in mementos and items left behind. Very few LGBT people that died, I would say before the 50s, left diaries and letters. Uh, I think, again, remember, the dead don't have privacy. I think some people would be mortified that we know this about them. I personally think it makes them more endearing and kind of sad that we didn't know their stories. Here is a matchbook. I remember the roundup from San Francisco. It was the dance place that opened at 6 a.m. Uh, but the thing is, I had another client here, uh, inherited items like letters, diaries, or collections of matchbook covers, ticket stubs to plays and performances. Go ahead and look up those businesses, look up those shows, okay? And this may piece together. It turns out that her great uncle was gay in San Francisco. And so go through them, and you may need to read those letters and diaries very carefully. Look for occupations, certain locations. They may not stand out as LGBT to you, but maybe someone that who was, they'd say, "Oh yeah, I knew where that was." Here is another early gay bar. I think this is San Francisco as well. And here, this is the story I had about matchbook covers. And so I knew that they were local gay bars. And I had researched these watering holes, so I knew. Also, I haven't fully proven this, but there seems to be a code about LGBT friendly bars. If you had a bar with a name that incorporated a color and an animal, like black cat, blue parrot, that was code to out of town visitors that it was a safe space. Okay. So the other thing in Chicago, where I'm from, what bars would do is old style is the local beer. It's the local swill. And it's a very distinctive sign. All the bars have them out. Well, an LGBT friendly bar used to have it turned upside down. And that was your code that it was a friendly place. The best way to do research for LGBT ancestors is to utilize the fan club. Now, I'm not talking dance fans, rainbow fans, no. Fan club is friends, associates, and neighbors. It's a concept developed by Elizabeth Shown Mills, noted genealogy author. And basically, it was the social network. There's a great quote by Armistead Maupin, who wrote Tales of the City. And he says, LGBT people, they have a biological family, but they often have a logical family. A logical family is that family that they're forced to build on their own because of lack of acceptance, etc. And you will find this. So now, one thing that you didn't know, 1940 U.S. Census, you could use the term partner to indicate someone in the household that was not a blood relation. You will more likely see boarder or roomer or lodger, especially in the previous census. So go ahead and look for that. Look for occupations on military records, and also census records that represent queer work. If someone was a mechanic, a woman was a mechanic during World War II. I know that seems stereotypical, but so you have to look for those. Passenger lists. These have been more value than you realize. A couple, well, you might not know they're a couple, but they're traveling together. They've got different last names. They're living at the same address. Also check addresses in voting registers, city and telephone directories. Does it fall within one of those gay neighborhoods? And also you will find this, an elderly couple or an older couple with an unmarried child. Very likely that person might be LGBT, taking care of parents, not living out on their own. Discharge records. unfortunately, you were discharged for homosexuality in the U.S. Uh, military service. So anything less than honorable might be a clue. Passport applications. Time for water. I'm losing it. So in the passport application, if you didn't have family, usually, in order to verify the applicant, you had to have someone swear as a witness that they knew you. That person could be part of their fan club, could be some LGBT connection. I'm not saying that every passport, but that is what could happen. Newspapers, probably one of the most valuable sources right now. Obituary and death notice. Unfortunately, as well, notices of news articles of those raids. You would have information there. Here's till death do us part. This is the sad part. Uh, After death, many LGBT people were buried separately from their spouses or lovers. Uh, I know that families may very well accept someone's partner or husband, but they get weird when death is involved. It could be through poor estate planning. My husband and I have been married 25 years. We took care of this right away. Not to doubt family members, but we wanted healthcare directive. I wanted my husband to be able to see me in the hospital, etc. But this is what happens at the end. So don't expect most LGBT couples to be buried together. Okay, blood trumps friendship, and that's what it comes down to legally. Uh, Travis Banton, very well known Hollywood dress designer. His name would have been up there with Edith Head and all the others, Ori Kelly. And you'll see that he's buried here with his parents. And I think that his brother, okay? So right there. Uh, so some couples plan an assured final wishes. As for clues, this is what you look for in a death notice or an obituary. Lifelong bachelor, survived by siblings, no immediate survivors. That could be an indication. This is a weird story about two men that were a couple and they both died on the same day. And it set off an estate battle because they couldn't decide which one died first. Uh, Also, you may see longtime companion, devoted friend. It would be very rare until the late 20th century to see partner or lover or spouse listed. This is an interesting one from Logan, Utah. And, I went through, and this woman was, very heavily involved in poetry, surviving on her longtime companion, Zan Knutson. See that the name Zan is not gender specific. She also was LDS. So that brings up a lot of questions. So, conclusion, things were different back then, and I'm going to show you some case study records now. Things were different back then, and you have to understand that. Okay, here's the word homosexual. I think this might be German. The term was not in use until 1869. Did you know that? Coined by a Hungarian journalist. You have to put that in perspective. What you and I know in the 21st century, when it comes to how LGBT people identify themselves, it would be so foreign and so strange to any LGBT ancestor that you have prior to 1940. Great. But as I said, here's a French picture. LGBT people have always existed. Uh, don't feel pity for any gay ancestor, LGBT ancestor. We may express sadness, but we can't compare. In their eyes, they may have had a great life that they carved out for themselves. It probably was more difficult than it is for LGBT people today. And thanks for sticking with me with my voice. I'm really sorry about this. Let me cover, I think, 3 cases of research here. Now, the people I'm going to highlight are somewhat, I don't want to say well known, but in their field and in their time, they were notable. It's difficult to find LGBT people that are basically living in the rural areas or that didn't make a note for themselves. I wish more and more of these records would come forth. There are some LGBT archives out there. There's a noted one in Chicago. Okay. So Dorothy Arzner, she was a director, included Clara Bow's first talkie. She's very often linked romantically with choreographer Marion Morgan. So Dorothy Arzner, right here is her final grave, and I'm hoping that you can see this. Basically, it has information there. I'm going to go back to the slideshow. And Marion Morgan was a well known dancer and choreographer. Let's see how Find a Grave's doing. And there it is. And this is a photo of them. Very rare. Okay. Basically, it was well known in Hollywood that they were a couple. They lived at the same address. And how do we know this? Well, there's that photo. Dorothy is right here, and this is Marion. I'm going to have to pull this up separately. This is a passenger list. So let me go ahead and get it. Ay, ay, ay. There we are. And I apologize having to do this, but this is the passenger list. And let's explore it. So what you're going to do, I found this on Ancestry. And here's Arzner. And here's Morgan. Their birth cities. Boom, right there. So they were traveling together from Bermuda. And they arrived in New York. Okay. So does it mean anything? On the surface, it doesn't. But when you put it together with all of the other items that you might do for, Dorothy Arzner, then you can go ahead and figure that out. Hold on. There we go. Perfect. Great. Jobina Howland. She was the model for the Gibson Girl. Very beautiful. Now, it was well known that she had a lesbian affair with Zoe Akins, who was a playwright. There's a 1930 U.S. federal census sheet shows her living with her friend Germaine Girard at the Alto Nido Apartments in Los Angeles, California. There's a photo of her, very well known at her time. I'm going to go over here to Howland. Don't tell me you don't have it. Oh, I apologize. Yeah, I don't think I have it. But basically, and let me see if the link works on Ancestry. No, it doesn't. Basically, it will list her as her maid. Travis Banton, as I said, it's a shame that he's not more well known. It may be because of his sexuality. He always listed himself as an artist, not a dress designer, not a costume designer. Now, he lost the passport on a cruise or on coming over from Europe, and it does offer some clues as to his sexuality. I'm going to go to Banton here, and let's see what I've got. So basically, he filed for an emergency passport, and let's go over here. Yeah, let's see if I have it over here as well. There's that. I'm going to look before I enlarge it. Here we go. I'm going to enlarge this. This is his affidavit saying, I kept the passport in my stateroom in an overcoat where I always kept it. There were two men in the cabin with me, and of course the steward also had access to the cabin. I don't remember any of their names. I remember seeing the passports, and I cannot account for the loss unless the passport was stolen. Our clothes were all hung up together, and so if you look at that one, and let's look at number 2. That's not going to be it. And number 1. Yeah, that's not going to be it either. But the thing is, the general consensus was that he had men come to his room and they stole his passport. All right. I'm going to take your questions and answer. I'm going to try and answer your questions. I apologize again for my voice. Aaron, are you still there with me?
Hi, Thomas. I'm back.
I
Yes.
just want to let people know you can always email me at highdefgen@gmail.com. I realize that a question may not come to you right away, but try and keep the focus on this topic. I don't do general research anymore. So, Aaron, what did you think of the presentation?
I thought it was fantastic. I learned a lot.
Did you? Wow.
Yeah, yeah. But I don't know. I guess percentage wise, when you're talking about the common uh, gay occupations in your research, do you find that that's usually accurate, or is it?
It's less accurate. I mean, now there are protections and office workers and everything, but back then, I mean, you really had to have a good cover if you were going to work in certain professions. But it also is how you presented yourself. Not all gay men are effeminate. Not all gay women are butch and masculine. You know, uh, and it's easy to jump to that conclusion, but it's where you felt most comfortable.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. I'm gonna put your your email here
Okay.
side by side while
Sure.
we chat a little bit. Um, so we don't have any live questions that come in. We do have a comment. This is great. Thanks for sharing about LGBT plus history. So some appreciation in the chat for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Um,
And as I said, Aaron, the reason I developed this is not only was I getting questions of people saying, I think, because there's more awareness of LGBT people now. But the thing is that as you go through your research, now hopefully certain things will stand out and trigger and say, oh, wait a minute. I remember that lecture, and this may be the case here. you know and like I said, I feel bad that I had to use three relatively notable people for the case study, but believe me, it's very difficult. There are no diaries and letters out there from everyday people that identified this way.
mhm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was wondering when you're saying this, do you at what point in time during your research, I guess, if there are, I would say, notable people donate their collections, their diaries, etc., to archives.
Yeah.
But is there any time that you see this happening? I guess.
Yeah, well, the thing is that's happened, but if you identify this way, if you identify anyway, let's say you're Latinx or whatever,
Sure.
please write up your memoirs. I just wrote mine over the Christmas holiday. And I had maintained, Aaron, a genealogy blog for 16 years. So I had stories written. But basically, I think it's important that we get our stories into these archives, etc., for future study, you know.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, yeah, so I think that's really important. But bottom line is, you will almost never find a record pre 1940 that will say this person was LGBT. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you really do have to read between the lines. Look at that person over each census. Do they stay in the same neighborhood? Are they with the same person? And that's what you really need to do. Uh, and again, keep in mind that they would not identify themselves as LGBT. They
Interesting.
just wouldn't. They wouldn't. And and that's what makes it difficult to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the introducing the concept to the presentation of presentism.
Yes.
And is that something that you learn in your work and in your studies?
Yeah,
Differentiate
it is.
yourself from?
And I think it really holds true. I think people need to do it in terms of everything today, especially in terms of race relations when we come to enslaved ancestors. And, I have a French Huguenot great grandfather, ninth great grandfather, landed in New York in 1675. He had slaves.
Mm,
I found a slave inventory from 1699. Uh, I'm not giving him a pass. There were people in 1699 that were vehemently opposed to slavery. But what I do in terms of, trying to further along the conversation, I made sure to donate that inventory to the local historical society. I'm not ashamed to do that, so that those names are there for future resources, for future researchers. See what I'm saying? There
Absolutely.
should be no shame of some of these things, but uh, it's so easy to do that. And I'm not going to beat up my ancestors. I don't know what was going through their mind. I don't know what freedoms they had to speak their mind back then as well. You see what I'm saying? So
Sure.
it's very, very different. Uh, but we do have to watch out for it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I guess, do you have time for one more question
Sure, I
of
do.
my
Yeah.
own creation?
Okay.
I guess, in your research, in your work, what has been the most difficult obstacle to kind of breaking through? We have people coming in looking for help, and they're looking. Sometimes it'll be that one thing that's just not clicking. What has that been
Right.
in your
Well,
experience?
I think for the most part, we come in what we call them brick walls. An example, African American research. Most people think, well, enslaved people were not named fully in the census until 1870. So, you know, I'm not going to find anything. Not true. Very often, a brick wall is of our own construction through a lack of education. We don't know the record sets. We make assumptions.
Mm.
Here's another one. The urban legend about having your name changed at Ellis Island. Now,
Yes,
that only happened with one person. It happened to be an LGBT person who tried to sneak in as a different sex. But the fact is, your name had to line up with the passenger list, the manifest. Otherwise, you weren't admitted. Uh, the other thing is, everyone thinks, oh, yeah, they came to New York, they came to Ellis Island. Ellis Island didn't open until 1892. It was Castle Garden before that. So this is what I'm saying is uh, one thing that I always use an example when I teach. Someone once asked Albert Einstein how he came up with the theory of relativity. He said, I had to put myself in that place of I don't know. It's intellectual humility. Basically, he said, I had to strip away all my prior knowledge and then go in there free and clear and build from there. So what I tell people, you know, the family stories are sentimental and they're great, but free yourself from all that information and go with the evidence. You see what I'm saying? I hope that makes sense.
absolutely. Fantastic advice. I love it. And thank you so much for your
Great,
time.
great,
Great presentation. And again, I'm going to pop up the link to your syllabus
okay,
here, so people should be seeing that on their screen.
great,
Uh, genealogybargains.com/LGBT.
great.
So thank you so much, Thomas,
You're
for
welcome.
joining us,
Great, thanks,
and
Aaron.
thanks you all for tuning in.
Okay, bye
All right,
bye.
bye bye.